Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Neid, and today I am joined by Ray Gorman. Ray is the owner of Engage Movement. He started off in clinical practice and then transitioned into helping other clinicians expand their practice in the online space as well. So Ray,
Yeah.
welcome to the podcast.
Paul, thank you for having me, man. Pleasure to
No.
be here.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. I mean, you've worked in a number of different capacities in a clinical setting, now into the online space in a mentorship setting. What's been the story? Where do you come from?
Yeah, man. So I think, like a lot of physical therapists, my journey started pretty typically. I always knew I wanted to be in the medical field, but I didn't quite know how. And background in strength and conditioning, played sports all my life. And then, in college, I actually tore my ACL.
Hmm.
And that kind of put a whole new perspective on things for me. And I didn't realize it at the time. But as I was going through my ACL rehab, I started to get to the end phase of it. And I was like, hey, like, why do I have to come into the clinic to do things that, I'm doing harder things at the gym on my own? And it kind of clicked for me that the way that model was set up, like I had to be there for them to make money. So that was kind of like the first seed that was planted. Go to PT school, I start practicing clinically, and probably about a year in, I kind of get that bug that's like, man, like, is this what the rest of my career is going to look like? I worked with great people. I enjoyed my coworkers, but just like the setting wasn't for me. I was working with clients that didn't really want to get results. They just wanted to get to their imaging or their injection or surgery. And honestly, man, it was really draining. So one day I'm walking into the clinic super early. I kind of look at the sign in the parking lot as the sun is coming up over the mountains, and I'm like, existential crisis hits.
Hmm.
Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? I go home that night and I open my LLC to start my cash based business. And that went well. I think, kind of like a lot of people in the fitness space, I just was trading time for money, but I was now making more money rather than, somebody paying me
Hmm.
30 bucks an hour. I get to charge 150 bucks an hour. Um, and then I started working for a company where everything we did was online. And it really started to like branch out my mind, expand what I thought was possible as a practicing physical therapist. And I kind of saw, well, here's all these problems that we have on the in-person side, but like there's a lot of pros to it as well.
For sure.
And here's all these problems that we have on the fully remote virtual side, but there's a ton of pros to it as well.
Hmm.
Why don't I just start like selling a virtual offer to my in-person clients? And that was kind of the model that I started to implement, within my business and really kind of expand my horizons. Um, I actually went on to help that company build a lot of their, educational foundation stuff, and we kind of took that idea and monetized it. As far as the online part, we took our education that we were doing from the staff side,
Hmm.
and I was kind of responsible for the operations piece. Built that business to about I think in total the two businesses we were doing about 3 million a year.
Wow.
Um, and then just kind of fell out of alignment with the vision there, and that kind of led me back to where I am today, man.
I find it so interesting that like we go through these different phases of evolution and we find positives and negatives to each one, and ultimately there is no perfect business, right? There's no
Yeah.
perfect career. Um, you just kind of get to a place where you're more and more in alignment, and I love the way you use that word because I actually just finished writing a blog post about that for Coaches Corner University today about just having your choices being in alignment with your values.
Yep.
What were some of the things from an alignment perspective that you got more clear on as you came towards where you are in your business today?
Yeah, I think the first was like the type of client that I wanted to work with was always very clear to me. I really enjoyed being on the higher end of the performance spectrum. Like I really like that clientele. And that doesn't mean like it has to be elite level athletes. It just means it has to be people that look at their body from a performance lens. So
I love that.
yeah, so
I love
it's
that you said that. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like it doesn't, my background is in CrossFit, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. I worked with some strongman competitors. But along that spectrum, I also worked with like everyday CrossFitters, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
those aren't high performance individuals in the way that they're competing, but they are in the way that they're thinking about taking care of their body, in the way that their motivation is a driving force. And so, that was really one of the things that I kind of sought after. And when we kind of started to shift towards more of this, like, obesity epidemic and chronic pain epidemic, it was like, yes, those are really big problems, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not really the things that light me up. And I feel like there's a big mismatch in the problem and the person that sometimes wants to solve that problem.
Okay. So this is something that I deal with, especially with young coaches all the time. So I
Yeah.
love that you're highlighting it. It's like, yes, the obesity epidemic is awful. It's a
Yeah.
terrible problem. Someone will solve it, but it's not the problem that I'm passionate about solving.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say no. Like I using my own practice as an example, like I have people all over the spectrum from like national level bodybuilding competitors to we call them lifestyle athletes. So
Yep.
people who don't
Love it.
compete, but they treat themselves like athletes. And then I have people who come to me like, "Hey, I've never trained before."
Yeah.
It's like, cool. I could definitely help you, but my coach Nat over here, he's the expert in that area. You would be a better fit for him, and so you move them over there.
Bingo.
Being able to say no to someone who isn't your ideal client is tough, especially at the beginning. So how did you reconcile that with like, well, I need to have a full practice.
Oh,
So what do I
yeah.
do?
Good question, man. I think that everybody is trying to find the things that work for them without the part of experiencing the things that don't.
Okay.
So the way that you actually find your ideal client, obviously in our program, we have worksheets that help you identify your ideal client and exercises that help you identify your ideal client. But really, like, the key in finding your ideal client is working with a bunch of people who aren't that,
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
you
sure.
know, and being like, okay, like, I said yes to that person for the wrong reason. And like you said, it doesn't mean that I can't help them. It just means that, like, I am not the most energized to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's somebody out there who is. So, like, really common for me in my practice, I came from a background of outpatient orthopedics. We did a lot of post-op rehab. I worked in Division I athletics at my second job. But my cash practice like wasn't really set up for post-operative clients. Like, I didn't have the biohazard stuff. I didn't really have the software to send the quick communication over to the doctors at that point. Like, that wasn't really the way that I wanted to build my practice. So it just became very easy for me to say, you know what, go see my buddy John over at the place I used to work at. They'll take great care of you. Get to this point in the journey, that's when you'll probably start to feel like, hey, I really want to get back into the gym and doing the things. And you actually start to create like this ecosystem of knowing
Mm-hmm.
exactly what the flow is going to be like. But ultimately, man, I've just worked with a lot of clients, a lot of psychographic types where I'm like, yeah, you're not ready to make the change that you need to make. And it's not my job to convince you. It's
Mm-hmm.
my job to help you question the belief that is holding you back. And until you've done that, you're not an ideal client for me.
There's a lot of alignment between your views and mine here. I totally agree with you on all those points. Um, what stuck out to me about the way that you described that process was the growth mindset associated with it. So it's
Yeah.
like, even though this person doesn't work for me, they work for another company that could be seen as a quote unquote competitor.
Yep.
If they could serve you better, I want you going there because I want you getting the best care possible if that's not what I can provide. Knowing full well that if they do a good job, you're going to get success. You may come back to me, you may not, But
Yep.
regardless, if I gave you a good referral, you're still going to think very highly of me, and I may get your referral in the future.
Yeah.
That is so important for people to understand, that you don't exist in a silo, and that ultimately, and maybe you'll disagree with me, like I don't really view myself as having any competitors in the industry because there's only one of me.
Yeah. I think that is a concept that I don't want to say I struggle with. It's like I both agree with and disagree with at times, if that
Okay.
makes
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
right? It's like there is, because one of my coaches kind of has that same exact view. And I think it's easy to say like, oh, I have no competition. Yet there are other people out there who can earn the business of the clients that I'm going after.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, while nobody can compete against me personally, we can be in competition for the same audience. And I
Yeah.
think that there's like separating that part where it's like there's nothing, it's like better isn't better, different is better. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I try to do in my messaging is I try to talk about how we're different, not how we're better. And I think that kind of aligns with what
Yeah.
you're saying of like, there's no competition because nobody else is me. And so the thing that nobody can compete against is they can't compete against how we think. They
Mm-hmm.
can't compete against my values. They can't compete against my beliefs. They can't compete against, my feeling of how I want to help my clients build a business with freedom and flexibility and high efficiency and high profit and
Mm-hmm.
low overhead. And we're not just like the take all your profits and reinvest it into growth company. So like that's the way that we can kind of compete or eliminate competition, is saying like we're so much different that like it's not about being better.
I really like the way you frame that, because you're right. We are competing for eyes.
Yeah.
And where I feel like people would benefit from this sort of mindset of different is better, I find a lot of us get stuck, and like we all fall into this category. I mean, you mentioned you battle with it from time to time, because when you see someone being successful in something, you can look at it, especially if they're being successful in a way that doesn't align with your values.
Mm,
You can look at it and be like, well, fuck that person. They're shit. They
yeah.
shouldn't be having the success. And it could bring you down.
Yeah.
And then even worse, it could filter all the things that you look at negatively. And then you start making, we'll call them reactive decisions with your business.
Yeah.
What you really should be looking at is, well, they're having success at doing something. What could I potentially learn from them? Or even, well, if they're having success, I know what is possible in terms of level of success if I just keep doing the things that I'm doing and, checking the boxes that I need to check. What are some things that you do? Like, obviously we're on social media all the time producing
Mm-hmm.
content. How would you relate your like content consumption
Mm.
with the way that you're trying to manage your business?
The biggest filter that I think I process that kind of thought through is, do I want to build my business in the way that that person has
Mm-hmm.
in order to have what they perceive as success? So, for example, do I want to hire a big, massive sales team? Do I want to reinvest all of my profits back into the business just for the sake of scaling to scale?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because the biggest thing that I've kind of seen is people build somebody else's dream business and they end up with a nightmare.
Yep.
And so for me, it's very much looking at it through the lens of like, okay, I want my team to be this big. And if I feel like I want to bring on more people, I will then, do a little exercise to say, like, am I doing this for my ego, or am I doing this because it's actually something I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing that I constantly look at, where it's like, you have to make sure that you're comparing the model that has driven quote unquote success for somebody to what's valuable for you. Because I talked about my background being in operations, and we had this $3 million a year business, but man, there were fires everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
There were fires every day. And so, do I want a business where I can say, look how much money we're making? Or do I want a business where literally, like, I know that my team is going to cause me no headaches because of the way that things are structured?
Dude, this is, I find myself in the position often with this podcast where I'll get a recommendation from another guest and I'll meet the person for the first time. And I'm like, I feel like I'm talking to somebody who just jives with me. Like, this is
Yeah.
perfect, because I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a mentee of mine who went to a conference in the UK, and every single person at that conference had a call setter, had, a marketing team, had, all of he was using AI chatbots in their DMs. And he's like, well, why aren't I doing these types of things? Why don't you do these types of things? You've grown your business. And I was like, because it doesn't align with my values, and it doesn't align with what I would determine to be a successful business. Because like you, my team is amazing. I don't have problems from my team.
Yeah.
They operate fantastic. We grow very slowly in an incremental fashion, month over month, and we have a stress-free business.
Yep.
That's what I want. I also my values of connection, relationship building, service delivery don't align with me using a call setter, because I believe that the relationship starts the moment you speak to that person for the first time.
Yeah.
So when you look at, do my values align with the systems that I've implemented to take me to my definition of success? Well, you have to start by determining your values and your success definition, and then the systems kind of define themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like in your approach to mentorship, you do a lot of work on those extremities of that spectrum to really try to determine, hey, like, what do you want your business to look like?
Yep.
Where are you right now? Where are your values? And then it becomes very simple to just structure that around those 2 points.
And we have a very, like, the biggest theme that I've learned about myself in my life is my desire for flexibility in all things that I do.
Okay.
I I struggled practicing clinically because it lacked a lot of the flexibility that I wanted to live the life that I wanted to create.
Okay.
I struggled being in a COO role where I was told I had autonomy, but like didn't actually have the flexibility and autonomy to be able to do what I needed to do.
Right.
So when I, unshackled myself from all of those things and my life became the most flexible it ever could be, where I can work with clients in a synchronous way, like this, talking with them one-on-one. I can work with my clients in an asynchronous way with, voice messaging support that we give to our clients. The biggest thing that I realized was, like, the massive stress reliever for me was nobody else controlling my time, nobody else controlling my destiny, not the model, the setting that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we were kind of able to create for our clients. It's like, we teach them that, like, look, your service mechanism can operate on a spectrum. It can be as much in person, synchronous as you want it to be. It can be as much virtual, asynchronous as you want it to be. And I'll teach you both models, and then you get to create where you fall on that spectrum for different seasons of life, for different client archetypes who maybe need more handholding in person, for clients who need more freedom and flexibility, don't want to come in person. Like, so everything that I'm building in my business is centered around that thesis that, like, I will attract the people who freedom and flexibility is really important to.
How do you reconcile freedom and flexibility with revenue? Because ultimately, we know that the asynchronous model of communication, dollar per hour, you're going to make more money.
Yep.
You can just be way more efficient with it.
If you set it up right, you'd be surprised at how many people don't set that up right. But you're correct. Yeah. It should work like that.
It should work. Yeah. But then there has to be some element of enjoyment, right? Because, I'm thinking of one specific person that I worked with who just absolutely fucking loved one-on-one personal training.
Yeah.
Just would refuse to give it up. And I was telling him, like, you don't have to. Like, you can do as much of it or as little of it as you want. But what he came to realize was there was ultimately a trade-off between he wanted to scale his business, but he's running out of time.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you address that with the clients that you work with.
Well, you kind of, one, I never assume anymore, right? I never assume that my problems, my solutions are the same as your
Right.
problems, your solutions. I shot myself in the foot big time with a sales conversation with somebody where I was just talking about like how, I kind of felt like at times I was babysitting my clients and I didn't really enjoy the one-on-one part when I was practicing clinically. And same thing, she's like, "Well, I love the one-on-one side." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, this is going to be a really hard hole to dig out of because the problem that she's experiencing isn't the same problem that I'm experiencing." Um, but the balance there is helping them understand the ways that you are going to scale your business. When we go back to how a business is going to scale,
Mhm.
it's pretty straightforward, right? We can scale with people, we can scale with price, and then what we talk about is scaling with process.
Okay.
So, what a lot of the other consulting companies out there, especially in the cash based physical therapy space, are talking about is they're talking about scaling with people. They're saying, hey, if you want to work yourself out of the business, you want to quote unquote work yourself out of a job, which really like you're just working yourself into a different job in the business. Like
Yes.
it's very frustrating when people say that. I'm like, well, hold on, you're still like doing a job.
I get the same
Um,
feeling when people say passive income.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Let me tell you guys, there's no such thing.
No such thing.
And then we have scaling with price, right? Where it's like you can obviously charge more for the same service,
Mm-hmm.
or you can charge, or you can scale via process, which that's what we do. We help you implement a model that is scalable without bringing more people in, without raising your prices.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that people kind of have to understand is like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we have to fix the foundational layer.
Okay.
So it's like for us when we come in, it's like, hey, we're still going to fix the cracks in the foundations of your in-person process.
Right.
We're still going to make sure that we help you get to a price point that is reflective of where you want to be in the market and what your service should be valued at.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like you kind of have to pick one of those three things, or you have to be okay with your ceiling, with your limitation.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest issue that I think people have to kind of circle back on your question is like some people just have really poor reality versus expectation of I want to scale my business, but I don't want to do the things in order to scale the business. Then it's like, well, how can we just get you okay with where your business is at so that you don't feel this constant sense of anxiety that you need to scale?
That's a really interesting point because I think a lot of people, when they get into this, so scaling systems is something that I would consider myself an expert at. Like when it comes to providing a high level of service in the least amount of time possible that people love, that's where I would consider to be my bread and butter in my own coaching practice and in what I teach. But when you free up time for people, they end up feeling like shit about themselves because they should be working more.
They don't know what to do with the new
They
time.
have no, like
Yeah.
I was chatting with a person that I've worked with in the past, and he's like, "Man, making more money than I ever thought I would. I have more time than I ever thought I would, but I
Mm-hmm.
just sit in my own thoughts and ruminate and feel like I'm
Mm-hmm.
lazy."
Yep.
How do you deal with that?
Man, I deal with that.
Me too.
Like
Me too, for sure, 100%.
like it's
I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. That's I am. My wife can attest to it that if
oh,
I'm not working, I feel useless.
yeah. I think, like for me, man, look, I've been working with a therapist for the last 8 years now.
Amazing.
And it's been one of the best things that I've done for my relationships. It's been done one of the best things that I've done for my personal growth. It's been one of the best things that I've done for my business. And so it's allowed me to be like really reflective on things that I'm like sensitive to and why I'm sensitive to them. And the reality is, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs actually struggle with this, is they are actually conditioned to calmness only being felt when they're in chaos.
Yes.
Right? It's like if we don't feel that stress response, if we don't feel that cortisol running through us,
Hmm.
something has to be wrong, because everything that we've been conditioned to in business and what we consume and how we think about business and how we think about productivity is all about hustle and grind. It's all about go, go, go.
That's really sexy though, too, right? Like that hustle grind, like the
It
hustle
is.
porn on the internet.
Yeah.
Um, I love that you mentioned therapy because it's something I'm very passionate about. I've been going to therapy since 2019, and I have an appointment on Wednesday. Like I go every
Hmm.
month, and I consider it my like emotional toothbrushing.
Yeah.
Your ability to reflect on yourself with a neutral second party, I guess would be, um, is incredibly valid. And I wonder. I find myself thinking about this too. So you said calmness and chaos,
Hmm.
and you said this idea of productivity. But realistically, how productive can you be if you're not actually doing the work underneath the hood
Hmm.
to know what that productivity is leading towards?
Yeah.
Because you can fill yourself with work night and day. And this is something that my therapist said to me a long time ago, was like, has there ever been a day where you worked until, I go to bed pretty early, so you worked until 9:30 at night, you put your laptop away and you went right to bed? Has there ever been a day where you put your laptop away and there wasn't more to be done?
Hmm.
And I said,
Never.
never. And she said,
Never.
okay, what about the days when you closed your laptop early? Was there more work to be done? I was like, well, yeah. She's like, so it stands to reason that there's always more work you could be doing, but is there more work that you should be doing?
Yeah.
And that was really eye opening for me to realize.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you're like that, entrepreneurs, they're type A, they want control, they want to feel like they're working towards something all the time. But I spent the majority of my life, I would say up until so I'm 37 right now. I'd say up until I was like 31, 32, just doing and
Yep.
not a lot of time being.
So two things to kind of add on that. One of the
Yeah.
things is there's a reason why I love working with, I identify very well with performance providers, wellness providers, right? Who are in kind of that strength and conditioning realm. And big CrossFit guy myself, so
Hmm.
intensity. Well, the biggest problem that I used to see working with my patients was intensity dial too high for too long.
Hmm.
And so if you have a client that you're working with who is constantly training at red line every single day of the week, never modulating intensity down, do you think that that person is going to have a long runway or a short runway before they burn out, get hurt, that kind of thing?
Short, for sure.
Short, right? So business is kind of no different.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I almost look at it through the lens of like, we can only sprint for so long, but we're sprinting during a marathon. So like you have to structure your business and think of it in terms of like, how would you structure a client's training program?
Hmm.
So this is the dose of work that I'm going to do. This is the time that I'm going to take off to then reset for the next dose of work. And oddly enough, man, like, when I kind of had this transition period from being an environment that, out of alignment in chaos or, out of order, 10 out of 10 stress, to then like having nothing on my plate and figuring out what I was going to do. Um, I was like, I'm going to take 3 months off. That was the plan.
Okay.
I needed to get my nervous system from a 10 down to a 2. And I used to tell myself this story that like I used to love reading. I used to be a big reader. And then I started to get out of it and I started to tell myself like I guess I just don't like reading anymore. And
Hmm.
oddly enough, the first book that I read on my, finding myself journey was Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday.
Great book.
And I realized it wasn't stillness that bothered, or it wasn't reading that bothered me. It was being still while reading. And it was really hard for me
Oh, yeah.
to like focus on getting through 10 pages because my brain was just wired to all of the other things that I could be doing. So again, it's like kind of one of these things where it's like the lesson that I've extracted from that now is every day I wake up and I have the choice to work from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I have the choice to do absolutely nothing, but I have to find that sweet spot for me of like what feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are going from this employee mindset to entrepreneurial mindset, it's like they want everything laid out for them, checklists laid out for them. And like it doesn't work like that when you're your own boss. Like you have to
Yeah.
create it and you have to experiment with it. So like for me, like I don't start my day until like 10 o'clock most days. I try to be done by 4 o'clock, 3:30 so I can get to the gym. Does that mean that always happens? No. But like that really is a good balance for me that makes me feel like this is going to be sustainable for a long period of time. And then every other Friday, I want to take off.
I resonate very deeply with that, and I also love using training as an analogy for everything. Because I mean, coming to you as an athlete as well, like training's just an easy proxy for everything else.
Yeah. So many
It's like
lessons.
so many lessons. I
Yeah.
mean, I work in pushes and pulls. I
Yeah.
can sprint, and I can sprint really hard, and I know how to put my head down and get some work done. But I need to have an end date. I need to know when that end date's going to be. Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to highlight as well is like when you're looking at your business as a marathon and you're trying not to sprint the marathon, you can't win at business. And
Mm.
this mindset was
Hmm.
something like I read the book The Infinite Game.
Yeah. Simon Sinek, right?
Simon Sinek,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a phenomenal really quick read, but a very
Sure.
phenomenal read, and I took a lot of lessons away, especially when it comes to my relationship with my wife, when it comes to the relationship I have with my clients, and the way I look at our business. We can't win at business. The goal is not to win at business, it's to just keep doing business over a long period of time. And that's how you will grow and scale and sustain.
Yep.
Because ultimately, winning at business is getting out alive, which no one does. We all die.
Yeah. Yeah. There was I can't remember the book, but it says like, the morbidity rates of business is 100%,
Yeah.
right? Like every business over a long enough time span will cease to exist.
Yep.
And so you're so right. I think the thing that I kind of pick up on that is you refer to it as push pull. I think of it as like it's this balance of urgency and patience.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's really difficult when people are starting out because they underestimate how difficult it's going to be. They underestimate like how long it will take them to get to meaningful revenue. They underestimate like how valuable their time is because we work with a lot of people they're currently working 40 hours per week
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to transition them out, but they get stuck in that catch 22 of like, I need more money to leave my full-time job, but I need more time from my full-time job to make enough money to be able to leave it. They get
Mm-hmm.
stuck in that catch 22 phase. And it's really fun to coach people when they're like starting to believe in themselves and they get that proof of concept and they're like, oh wow, I replaced my salary in 1 hour or 1 day per week. Like, yeah. Now imagine what happens if you had 130 hours per month back. You'd be unstoppable.
What do you think is the best tool that someone in that situation can use? Because I built my business while working 40 hours a
Yeah.
week, and I know what I did, but I'd love to know how you help other people do the same.
I think for me that is a hard question for me to answer because I'm such a contextual nuanced guy
Perfect.
that for somebody single with no kids, it's so much easier to take risk.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody who is the solo provider for their family and they have a wife, they have 1, 2 kids, they're the person that has the benefits, the insurance, like we have to just be so much more conservative with them in the approach
Absolutely.
that we take. And so I think the thing that kind of helps is like, I'm just going to be straight up with anybody that I work with of like, hey, look, like we've had clients get results in our program in as quick as 6 weeks with nothing in place. We've had other clients where it takes 6 to 9 months.
Yep. Same.
And for you, I think it's going to really be like, How much traction do you get? How much, like, unfortunately, how much time away from your family are you willing to sacrifice while you maintain the stability of the financial relationship? Because something has to give
Yeah.
so that you can invest that time short term and eventually buy back the whole lot of it.
I think people feel so trapped. They feel so trapped in their
Man,
current situation.
they
And
do.
I'm a big believer in choice. I'm a big believer in the power of choice and the compounding interest of small choices over time.
Yeah.
And when that choice, like any, involves a trade off, that trade off of
Yeah.
a little bit less time with your kids, you're missing bedtime, maybe you're staying up a little bit later, you're missing out. I try not to get them to miss out on hours of sleep, but it
For
happens.
sure. For sure.
That's a really challenging position to find yourself in, especially when the payoff isn't guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
I find it like, because I don't make promises in my business. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
we
I
don't
don't.
offer a guarantee anymore either. It's you can't.
I'll work with you and I'll get you your first 5 clients, or I'll work with you until you do. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can't control their effort, and I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to put my name on that. But at the same time, I think that does create a little bit more urgency on their part.
Yeah. It takes away the safety net,
Yeah,
right? It takes away that safety net of like, oh, okay, well, I've got Paul's support as long as I need to, like, I need to do this within that time frame so that I can get out of this situation. I can reinvest in myself. The biggest thing is, and this is really hard in the sales process, right? Because
for sure.
you hear all these sales things where it's like the thing that you need to get across is certainty. You need to get across certainty. And it's like, look, if you need certainty, like, stay in your job.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is the most uncertain thing you could potentially undertake.
Totally agree. So that also doesn't mean it's not worth it. Like, that's actually the biggest thing that makes it worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
So I get people, and you probably have this too, where they're like, well, I just don't know if I don't know if I could take on that risk. And I'm like, well,
Mm,
can we, like, time out for a second? Could I provide for you a different perspective? You are seeing going into business for yourself as risky. What if, like, the situation that you're in right now actually presents the most risk possible for the life that you want to live? Because
absolutely.
you know the ceiling, you know the next step,
Yeah.
you know exactly what your life is going to look like.
Yep.
And if you're cool with that, then stay down that path.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not cool with that, then the risk is going down that path when you know it's not something that you really want to do. So, are you sure starting your business is actually the risky thing?
Yeah, but that is, we crave comfort. We
Mm-hmm.
crave what is safe and known,
Yep.
and jumping into the realm of unknown. I mean, that's why mentors exist, right?
Totally.
They can be that guide with the lantern leading you into the cave, showing you where the potholes are and where the missteps are. It's something that I wish I reached out to a mentor sooner than I did.
Same, man.
Um, but when I did, I just saw the growth. I saw what happened because I was seeing things that I knew were there but didn't necessarily recognize. And I also saw a lot of the things that I wasn't even aware I was doing wrong or doing inefficiently, or things that I could have potentially capitalized on. What are some, actually, here's a great question, because you alluded to it, of other companies making promises or other companies giving these sales pitches that don't necessarily align with your values, which
Mm-hmm.
I totally resonate with. I'm never going to lie to somebody to get a sale. But what are some things that people think they need to be doing, but are really going to not necessarily set them back, but maybe aren't going to have the impact that you think they would?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. I'm sure this is something that you see as well. The first is that, like, they feel like they need more continuing ed to be a better coach, a better practitioner. And, like, you can be the best at that and still feel that way, and realize that like that isn't going to make you more money or get you more clients if you don't know how to market, you don't know how to sell. You don't know how to create visibility around what you do.
That to me is the number one hallmark of some, like, they feel insecure about something, so they do something to do it
Yeah.
just so they're doing something.
And I don't know what you see in the coaching realm, but we kind of see the cream rise to the top, in that like the people who feel like they're providing a better service, a better experience, those tend to be the ones that naturally say like, huh, this setting really isn't for me because I feel like I'm providing such a better result outcome to my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I often find that it's like, man, you really don't need to go down the rabbit hole of more Con Ed. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't eventually
Yes.
reinvest your money into those skills. It just means like it's not going to solve your problem right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing.
The way that I conceptualize that to a lot of the coaches that I work with is like, has your knowledge ever prevented you from getting somebody results?
Yeah. Yeah.
9.5 times out of 10, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like, so why do you need more knowledge right now?
I totally see that. My buddy said, one of my buddies had said like, that's like telling me you need to lose weight before you come to the gym. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
like
Yeah.
it's like you need to come in so that you can develop those skills and do the thing that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I think kills businesses early, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this because of some of the things that you had alluded to in what you help people do, is going in too hard on systems and processes too early in the business, when there's no rough client journey, when there's no sales being made, when there's no conversations being had, when there's no client data to actually work on. And it creates this facade that like, oh, I got to have this fancy go high level CRM built
Yeah.
out, and I got to have my pipeline and automation. It's like, dude, you haven't even worked with a client on pen
Yeah.
and paper yet.
Yeah.
You know, and I see so many people that are doing that, and they're like, well, I've done all this work. And I'm like, but you haven't gone to any networking events. You haven't asked anybody if you can solve their problem. You haven't even had your first client. What do
Yeah.
you need back end systems and processes for?
I will say this on sales calls, because on, like, I have no problem. I've talked about money before on the podcast, but like, we made $500,000 in our business and we didn't even have a CRM.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with just like,
Great service delivery. That's it.
exactly.
I totally agree. You know, the way I operate with my mentees is like, let's get a minimum viable product.
Yep.
Let's get you a platform that you can coach your clients on. Let's get you a platform that you can communicate with them with. Let's get you some baseline type of email marketing software that you can send large groups emails. Let's get your website set up. But at the end of the day, like, you just need a Stripe account and a Google Drive, and you could probably coach somebody.
Yep.
So let's just start talking about your coaching. Let's, start putting out more content, and it kind of relieves the pressure a little bit.
Yeah.
And the analogy I really love is, what's the guy who started LinkedIn?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, I
That's
forget his name.
LinkedIn's not really my realm. We post on there just based on like
Yeah, just
copy
because,
and
yeah.
paste stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But I heard him, he has a podcast called Masters of Scale. And I
Hmm.
used to have a tech company, so I was kind of listening to a lot of that.
Yeah.
And his analogy for building a business is like, instead of building the airplane first, jump off the cliff and then build the airplane on the way
Yeah.
down.
Yep.
And that's 100% how I dive into it. It's like, you don't even know. Look, you might think that your clients will need a system like I use with my clients. How are you going to know until you start coaching clients?
Dude, we're on version 10. You know,
Yeah.
like we're on version 10. I need you guys to be on version 1.
Mm-hmm.
I was we do a monthly call where we get everybody from, you know, different facets of our different timelines of our program all together. And since it's March, we kind of did like a quarterly review and then a quarter two planning, right? And one of the things that one of the guys said was like, because I had told them like, hey, I kind of did Q1 as like this big sprint, and now I'm taking a week off at the end. And in Q2, I'm going to structure my quarter like this. And he was like, it's kind of crazy to see how experimental you are in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, dude, everything that I do is a constant experiment. And I refer them back to, in our program, when we're talking about like tactical stuff, programming, getting people out of pain, writing the programs, constructing the programs. The thing that I'm always telling them is this concept that's like, think like a chemist. Like you are a chemist and you have these variables that you are able to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
And when you manipulate them, you end up with different reactions. And the goal is to manipulate the right variable so you get the reaction you want. Like business is no different than that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing in business is you probably need to wait longer than you think
Yeah.
to see if those variables are actually things that you need to manipulate. And that's a lesson that you have to learn through changing things too fast.
Are you finding that the social media landscape now and the saturation of the industry has kind of elongated those timelines a little bit?
Elongated the timelines in what way?
In terms of, so I was finding that, let's say 2, 3 years ago, you could be posting online and upon like first contact with a potential lead, you would get on a sales call probably within 3 weeks.
Yep.
I'm
Yes.
seeing that timeline now probably in the 3 to 6 month range.
Dude, 100%. I totally agree. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think number one is the biggest problem that we face as people running online coaching businesses is that people have been screwed over by other people running online coaching businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so when like you're saying, when there was kind of this virtual gold rush, post COVID, and everybody was adapting and everybody was figuring it out, and consumers were starting to say like, oh wow, like this is really cool. I can now work with a trainer online. I can work with a physical therapist online. I can work with a business coach online. Well, now those people have, attritioned out of those programs, and in a lot of cases have been made promises on things that weren't able to deliver on. No shade to, $100 million offers, right? From Hormozy. Like I think it did really great for the industry, but I think it made people write a lot of checks that they couldn't cash.
Mm-hmm.
And it made people put a lot of these guarantees and waste a lot of people's time and create these offers that, when I'm helping somebody build a business and they say, hey, I want to be fully online, it's like, okay, look, the reason why we recommend a blended model of service is because your timeline to meaningful revenue is going to be so much faster if we add that in-person component.
Yep,
Because
100%.
now we get to put a an imaginary circle around your location. We get to hyper target where your clients are, rather than you putting your messaging out into the abyss and you now being in competition with a million other coaches who are like we talked about in the beginning, competing for eyeballs, while you start to become that N of one,
Mm-hmm.
while you start to curate your audience, while you start to dial in your messaging, while you start to create that sniper rifle approach of this is my specific person. Like you are spot on, man, that people are very hesitant to
Yeah.
move forward in conversations now. I think partly because of that.
Yeah. The majority of our leads in our coaching business are coming to us with a negative experience with a past coach.
Yeah.
When I'm say majority, I mean probably close to 90%.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
on the mentorship side, very few of the mentees that I take on have never worked with another mentor.
Mm.
Usually they've worked with somebody else, and they're coming to me because, again, the differentiating factors of my messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's refreshing to them that I don't make promises, that I don't have a curriculum, that, that's one of the things that I clue into as a differentiating factor for me. But it's a battle that we face because you're really having to break down in that call with a lot of limiting beliefs, and even getting them on the call, you're going to have to break down a lot of limiting beliefs. You're going to have to create a lot of trust, start building that relationship. And content is the only way to do that. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, whatever, that first contact that you have with somebody is so, so, so important. When you're looking at someone's marketing strategy, someone who comes to work with you, how much of your energy is put into content generation?
So it kind of depends on if they're going to be fully in person or fully online, or more biased online.
Okay.
If they're going to be in person, their interactions can be the content band-aid,
Yep.
right? But there's so many people that come to work with us that are like, well, I want to build an online business, but I don't want to post online. And I'm like, okay, we got a problem here.
Yeah.
So the thing that we really try to do is I try to help them figure out, like, what is the actual block that's preventing you from, putting content out there. And most of the time it's like one of two things. It's either this general like fear of being judged, or more importantly, it's like this fear of being judged by their peers.
Nailed it.
And so then what happens is they start to censor their messaging. Like, we work with physical therapists, right? And I'm like, great post if your client was a physical therapist buying education from you.
Yeah.
Like, how do we bring this down to the level of consumer who like needs to know that this post is evidence-based, but doesn't need to have the long citation in it of who it's from and how they said it.
The PMID in the caption kills me every time. It's like, nobody cares, buddy.
I get why you're doing that, but I promise you, your consumer like is not looking for that through the lens. They want to know, who is this person? Can they help me? And what's the way that I kind of contact them? So I try to help them find a content medium that resonates with them, whether that is, written, audio, video. And then we help them take that piece of content and we help them work backwards into the other type of mediums.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, my content process is almost everything that I do starts with a written newsletter. That newsletter becomes a blog. That blog becomes a swipe post. That swipe post becomes individual pieces of content. It becomes a presentation for YouTube. I can then do shorts on it, just on Instagram. And content was really hard for me when I started.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it was so hard was because my brain was constantly in, kind of circling back to what we talked about earlier. My brain never actually had a chance to think about things creatively because it was always putting out fires in that last role I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to tell myself for a while, like, Ray, like maybe you're just not creative. Like maybe you're just not a creative person and that's why you don't like content. And then lo and behold, I removed that environment from my life. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, these are the things that I want to talk about. Now I just need to be brave enough, courageous enough to put them on the internet, and I think that's really where it's at. And like anything else, man, like you just have to create shitty content.
Yep.
To eventually create good content.
I totally agree. And I love the strategy that you use is actually exactly what we do. So or exactly what I teach is like, I call it waterfall content.
Yeah.
So like you start with some big thing and then it trickles down the waterfall into those smaller pieces of content. So you try to start with the largest, most robust piece of content that you can. That's usually going to be a newsletter or a blog or even a YouTube script.
Yeah.
And then with AI these days, like you can take that script, you can reformat it, you can rewrite it, you can get yourself 80% of the way there to a newsletter. You can take that newsletter, break it down, do the carousel post and all these other things. And Well, you can make 30, 40 posts a month
Mm-hmm.
very, very easily if you just leverage the tools.
The other thing too is like, you don't, when you're a coach or a physical therapist, you don't actually have to be creative with the content that you create, because your clients every single day are creating the content for you.
Yep.
So the easiest hack is like, what were the conversations that you had with people that you could just repurpose into a post?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody gives me an objection that I've never dealt with or managed, which is rare these days, but you still get them, or a belief that they have, almost like the immediate thing that I do in my head is I'm like, okay, writing a piece of content to help people break that belief is going to be the next thing that I schedule for my newsletter.
Yep.
I don't have to be creative. I just have to say like, why does this belief exist? What would I do to change it? And then what would be the shifts that you need to make before you'd be ready to even work with us?
Solve the problems of people who are already asking you to solve their
Mm-hmm.
problems.
Yes. Easy.
It's fantastic. I want to be mindful of time. I do have a couple quick hit questions.
Sure.
What are your PRs? You mentioned you're a CrossFitter. How
Oh
strong are you,
man.
bro?
Do you want my lifetime PRs or
Yeah,
my
let's go
my
lifetime.
my
Let's see where you're
current
at.
PRs?
Lifetime.
I used to be a bench fanatic, and
Okay.
so in college at like a buck, probably like a buck 50, 155.
Mm-hmm.
I put up 245 for two.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good.
Not bad.
My lifetime deadlift 405, back squat 315. Uh, Clean and jerk was maybe like 245, and snatch was like 185.
Not bad.
Those are my highlights, man. Now today, those numbers are not are not even close, brother. But
How do you feel? How do you feel like your athletic pursuits have fueled your business pursuits?
mm, um, I think when I was younger, there's always this like pursuit of wanting to get better at something.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically now, like I look at that through the lens of I golf a lot.
Okay.
And so I think golf has actually taught me a ton about business. And man, you want to talk about a sport where you can condition yourself to be okay feeling like an idiot, like go play golf.
Golf for me is a perfect way to ruin a nice walk.
And so like I think about, wanting to get better at golf, and I
Mm-hmm.
think about how I needed to put myself out there to do that. And I think about if I wanted to go play golf, I needed to ingrain myself in a group, a community of strangers, and join, another threesome to go play 9 holes or whatever. And so I really think like looking at business through that lens too, where it's like, hey, there's going to be times where I make a post that makes me feel like an idiot. There's going to be times where we make a mistake that, is like, oh my gosh, how did we do that in business? Um, and I think the thing that I've learned through that lens is just the pursuit of getting better
Mm-hmm.
lies in doing the thing that you suck at more and more.
I love that. I love that. I actually had one of my mentees on the podcast, and he framed it really cool. Same vein. It was failing at something or sucking at something is a prerequisite for success because
Mm-hmm.
you have to suck at it first.
Yep.
And coming from him, I thought that was pretty profound because he's one of the people that has had a really hard time getting some traction online.
Yeah.
And it happens. But he was like, yeah, it sucks, but I'm just going to keep doing the thing and getting better
Yeah.
at it and better at it and better at it. And eventually it'll hit. I was like,
You
great.
probably see this where people will come to you and they're, we can view it through the lens of like they're doing all the right things,
Mm-hmm.
and we just have to give them the tap on the back that says like, hey, I just need you to not change anything. I just need you to wait a little bit longer.
Yep.
Like I think a lot of people fall into that category with content. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, your content's good. Like you just need your audience to catch on and it be good enough for long enough.
Dude, I built my coaching practice up to 80 clients a month posting my own training. I literally
Yeah.
didn't do anything
Yeah.
except posting my own training for probably the first 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I actually have to be better at this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not something that would fly these days. I mean, unless your training's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm 37. I blew off both my quads this summer. Nothing I'm doing is wild.
Yeah.
Last real question.
Sure.
If you had a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to read, what would it say?
You're capable of more than you think. That might sound cheesy, but like it is the number one thing that holds people back, is that they really just don't think they're capable of building the thing that they want to build. And the hardest part for us as coaches is, I think, believing, and also the magic of it is believing in our clients more than they believe in themselves. Yep. Where it's like, I know you can do this. You just need to take the leap and I can help you get there. But if you never take the leap, there's nothing I can do, you know?
Yeah. I love that message, man.
So it is the number one thing that's going to hold people back, is just, you know, not trusting themselves and not believing in themselves. And you're capable of more than you think.
I love it. If there was one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Good question, man. Good question. One of my coaches, Eric Malzone, I think would be a good person for us to connect over.
Yeah.
He's been big in the fitness space. He's owned gyms. He's consulted with gyms. I think he'd be a good person to kind of talk to. And he's been a really good, just like a breath of fresh air for me in my business, of somebody that's like, you know, sometimes you just need somebody that says like, hey man, like you're on the right track. Like you don't even really need to be coached. You just need to know like, hey, you're on the right track. Like keep doing what you're doing. I think that would be a good connection as well. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. This is an awesome conversation with a lot of really good take homes.
Paul, thanks for having me on, man. I love doing stuff like this. So
it's my pleasure. And I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes for sure. Good, so you're definitely somebody that will help a lot of people.
I appreciate it, man. I look forward to it.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We'll catch you on the next one.